guys, it's Jess from Peace Love Books, and today I'm here with my February wrap-up. I did not have that great of a reading month. I did read 19 books this month, but I only had one 5-star read. And it wasn't even a romance, so I just was feeling really weird this month. Especially I had a reading vlog where I read the whole weekend of romances, and I gave 2 of them 2 stars, and I DNF'd 1. So I feel like I'm having an existential crisis right now because now I'm reading fantasy, and everything on my TBR right now is fantasy that I'm going to read this next week. But I am currently reading Chain of Gold by Cassandra, and I have about 100 pages left of that, and that's going to be 5 stars. So I am enjoying not romance right now, but I'm loving the romance in the not romance books. So I'm gonna get to the 19 books I read, and you'll see how I felt about all of them. So if I have a reading vlog for any of these, they will be linked down below, but the first one I read was Of Curses and Kisses by Sandy and Manon. I don't have my copies of this anymore. I had 2 arcs that they accidentally sent me, and I put them both in my classroom for students to read. So this one, I believe, came out in February, and I got it from Simon Teen, and this I gave 3 out of 5 stars. It's a kind of loose Beauty and the Beast, and it's kind of Romeo and Juliet too. These 2 families are enemies because of something that was stolen in the past, like some jewel, and our main character is Indian royalty, and she goes to a boarding school with her sister after something had happened that was the fault of the boy of the rival family, and just so happens he is at their school too, so she's decided to get close to him so that she could like ruin him. I still don't understand that plot, and I didn't really like this. There was like a friend in here that, this is just a pet peeve of mine, but the friend was involved in a relationship with a guy who was in a relationship, and when that came out, like, she was at fault, and I'm like, he's literally the one that was dating 2 girls. And why is he not getting in trouble? Why is everybody blaming her? So I don't like that double standard where like nobody is mad at the guy for actually doing the cheating when she was the one who was dating him because he was stringing both of them along. But it was just okay. I didn't really love it, and there was literally no homework and no school, and they were at this like elite boarding school that like presidents have gone to, so I'm like, okay, that's realistic. So it was alright. I wasn't a fan of the romance, and I was hoping for better. Next, I listened to the audio of Alaskan Wild by Helena Newberry. I think that's how you say her last name. And this one I listened to on audio. I think I said that on Audible Escape, and our main character is in the FBI, and she is trying to hunt down a witness for someone that she's hoping to put in jail, and so she has to go to Alaska to do that, and then she realizes that her witness has moved, so she has to jump on this plane, and it's these 2, I don't think they're FBI guys, they're a different section of it, and they're military, and they have these 2 prisoners, and it just so happens that one of the prisoners is this high class, rich, white collar criminal who is on his way to be like in prison for life, and he has bribed the marshals, or US Marshals, to help free him, and she's on there with this other Alaskan brooding prisoner who is being taken to the military for a certain reason that she doesn't know, and so then they end up crash landing, and her and this Alaskan guy have to survive together in the wilderness. I really enjoyed this. Obviously fall in love. It's a romance. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It was really fun. It was really action-packed and survival, and if you like that Alaskan terrain with your big Alaskan wilderness man, he had literally been living in the wilderness for months by himself, so he had like a cabin, but he's just your loner, and it was really fun. I enjoyed listening to it. Then I was sent a finished copy of Chasing Cassandra by Lisa Kleypas from the publisher, and I was so excited to read this. This one is about Cassandra. It's book 6 in the series. I've only read 2 of the other books in the series, so they can be read as standalones. In the beginning of the book, she asks her cousin to marry her because she's like, you know what, we would be happy together, and I can't find a guy I like. And then Tom walks in, and he is like, well, hey, like, why don't we get married? And she's like, no, and he is very entranced by her, and she is really intrigued by him. He is so sweet. I really liked his character, and I did give this 4 out of 5 stars. I feel like not a lot happened that much, which I think is common in historical romances, but I still really enjoyed their romance. It was really fun. He was always there at the different balls and events she had to go to, and he was really sweet. I really liked it. If you like a sweet hero, you would love this romance. Then I picked up The Other People by CJ Tudor from the library, and I read this because of Kayla from Books and Lala's book club she's doing, and this one is about a man who is driving, and in the car in front of him, he sees his daughter pop up and mouth daddy to him and then disappear, and he's like, that didn't happen. Did that happen? And he starts freaking out, so he pulls over to a rest area and calls his wife, and the police pick up and say, your wife and child have been murdered. He's like, no, my daughter's not dead. I know for a fact she's not. I just saw her. And so they all think he's crazy, and so he spends the next like year or so driving up and down that highway trying to look for this car and trying to figure out what happened to his daughter, and it goes from there. I did really enjoy this. I will say this has a paranormal answer to something, and I don't like it when my thrillers have a paranormal answer, because I'm looking for a thriller that's actually realistic, and that's why I like to be shocked by the ending, because it's something I didn't think about, but it could plausibly happen. And in this one, there was a shocking twist at the end about why things were happening, but then there was something paranormal that explained it, and I wasn't a fan of that. So I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I still really enjoyed it. It was still really thrilling and kept my attention a lot. Next, I picked up Bullseye by Monica James. I was sent an e-arc of this from the author, and this is the first in a duet, and it's about a guy who was just released from prison in the beginning. It's literally like him leaving the prison in the beginning of the book, and he ends up getting a job at a strip club as a bouncer and falls for it. The single mom stripper there, and she's more like an exotic dancer. She loves dancing, she teaches dance, but she has to get more money somehow because she's a single mom, and so she works there, and it is about the crazy things happening because our main character, Bullseye, is trying to get revenge on someone who did something in his past and was the reason why he's in jail. So that's all I can say. I really did enjoy it. We didn't really get a lot of our main character female as a mom, and I was like, but you have a son, and she was like never with her son, and I wanted more of that relationship, and I saw the twist coming at the end, like 20% into the book, so that is why I knocked it down a star, but it was still really fun. If you like the dark romance with a dark guy, you would enjoy this one, and I can't wait for book 2 to come out. Next, I listened to The Hunting Ground by Katie Robert on ebook, and I didn't know that Kindle Unlimited has like audiobooks that go along with it, so I had gotten the ebook for Kindle Unlimited, and it downloaded the audiobook, and I was like, oh, that's awesome, I'll listen to this, because I couldn't find the audiobook anywhere else. So that was cool. I didn't know that KU did that, but this one is about an FBI agent, and she was an FBI agent, and now she is like a park ranger, and they find a dead body at their park with the MO of a serial killer that's been killing people at other parks, and so her old partner ends up coming in to help solve the crime, and they solve it together, and there's a group of missing hikers, and they're being found dead one by one, so they need to figure out who this killer is and stop him before he kills everybody. And so this was really fun. There's actually a romance and some tension between the park ranger and her ex-partner, because they kind of had almost a thing, but he was married, so they couldn't, and it was just like unresolved feelings, and it was really fun, and I really liked the whole park setting. I really like things that take place like out in the wilderness. It was really fun, and there was a mystery going on, and it was dangerous. I liked this. I listened to this for Romanceopoly, for a serial killer book, so I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I read my Arc of Undercover Bromance by Alyssa K. Adams. This comes out in March. It's book 2 to the Romance Book Club, which I absolutely loved. To give that 5 out of 5 stars. And this one was actually really disappointing to me. It's Liv, who is the snarky, just angry little sister of the character in book 1, and I didn't like her character at all. She was really hard on Mac, who is our hero in this one. He is just the happy-go-lucky fun guy from book 1, and it's their romance, and it starts off with Liv being fired from her job from a misogynistic guy who sexually assaults his employees, and so she's trying to take him down, and Mac's gonna help her. We didn't have a lot of the book club like we had in book 1, or like the book they were using as inspiration, which I loved about book 1. We didn't have that a lot in here, and Liv was just really mean and really hard on Mac, and she was getting mad at him for doing things that she did to him. So it was really hard to connect with her, and I didn't really connect with their romance. I feel like they didn't really genuinely fall for each other. I don't know. I just didn't like Liv. I couldn't connect with her, so I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. I really loved book 1, and this one was hard to connect with, but book 3 looks adorable, and I cannot wait to read that one. Next, I listened to the audio of A Girl Like Her by Talia Hibbert. This is about a girl named Ruth who I believe has a form of autism, and she pretty much works from home, and she has a really bad past with someone in town, so nobody likes her, and she ends up meeting her new neighbor named Evan, who works with a guy from her past that she has a bad past with, and her and Evan start to get closer and become friends, and then fall for each other. This one I gave 3 out of 5 stars. It was good, but then it became just really redundant and boring. I really liked how we had representation with Ruth's character. It was an interracial relationship. Ruth was interesting, especially when we learned about her past, but I just felt kind of bored halfway through, and then I was just trying to listen to get to the end. So it was fun, it was cute, I really liked Evan, but it didn't hold my attention as much as I wanted it to. Then I read my pick what I read next for February, which was Cruel Prince by AJ. This was not on my radar at all. I had no idea what this book was about. It is a high school bully romance, and I have had trouble with those, especially with like Silver Swan and Boys of Bracia High. I hated those books, so I was wary going into this. This is about a girl who is back in town, and I think her parents died. I'm blanking on why she's back in town. And she is living with her aunt and her aunt's husband and her stepson. And so her stepson is super mean to her. It's not a step-sibling romance. It's not with the stepson. It's with the boy she was best friends with when she used to live in town, and he hates her guts because of what happened in the past. According to him, she was the reason behind something that happened in the past of his brother passing away, and so he blames it on her, and we don't know why until the end. I really liked this until the ending. I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. It was a really believable bully romance. Like, he had his reason for hating her, and she, I feel like, was too nice to him. Like, she would flip a switch and like be like, oh, you like me, when he was like playing games with her, and she was like too naive about it, and I was like, girl, you know he hates you, like stop trusting anything he says. But I really enjoyed it. It was very entertaining, and I'm very intrigued by book 2, so I think I will be picking up book 2 at some point. It is super long, but I am excited to read that. So if you want a good high school bully romance, I would recommend this one. Next is my only 5-star read this month, and that is Warcross by Marie Lu. It is a YA dystopian, kind of. I don't even know how to describe this. It's not dystopian, like sci-fi, whatever genre it is. I read this for my school's book club. I run the book club at my high school, and that was the book we chose to read this month. And it is about a world where virtual reality is pretty much what everybody uses, and the main character is a hacker, and there's this big games called Warcross. I feel like it's kind of like the Hunger Games with Ready Player One, where they go and it's a new kind of event each time, kind of like each of the Hunger Games was, and they all have to try to get the enemy team's like artifact. So it's kind of like capture the flag, I guess, but like once you get the flag, game's over. And she's never been able to participate because she has a criminal record, but she ends up hacking into the opening games of Warcross, and so the creator of Warcross actually ends up hiring her to try to find a hacker who is trying to destroy Warcross. And it was so good. The romance in here, how did no one tell me there was a really good romance in Warcross? Like, I would have read it way earlier, and now I really want to read book 2. I heard book 2 is not as good as book 1. Like, people have been rating it a lot lower than book 1, but I was all for that romance because there's a romance between her and the creator of the game. And it was so good, and I really loved it. It was really action-packed. I love seeing all the different games and the virtual reality and the conspiracy stuff going on, so 5 out of 5 stars. Cannot wait to read book 2. Next, I read Pennies by Pepper Winters. I listened to this on audio. It was because Chandler's book club from Chandler Ainsley was reading this month, and so I decided to pick it up since it was also free on Kindle. So I saw that it was on Audible Escape, so I listened to it, and I'm very confused by this because our main character is kidnapped and is turned into a sex slave and sold to this guy, and it's very dark. We get her there for like 2 years, I want to say. She's a sex slave for him. We don't get too much graphic, like it passes by a lot of time in like just a few pages, and then we get this guy who comes in who's working with her owner, and he is very intrigued by her and is like conflicted about what to do because he realizes that she's a sex slave. And I feel like this wasn't a romance. So I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars because I feel like it's marketed as a dark romance, and I did not feel any romance whatsoever when I was reading this, and it was just really about a girl as a sex slave and this guy coming in and her kind of being conflicted about if she actually likes him and what she should do about it. So it was okay. I mean, like, it passed the time, and I was like interested the whole time, but I'm just like, what's the point? I don't know if the rest of the series has more romance in it, but this was not a romance, so I wasn't enjoying it as much. Yeah. Next, I read Bound by a Duty by Cora Riley. I'm really annoyed I got this early in January, and I told you guys in my haul the pages were cut wrong, but all of them were, and I got resent one of the books because the cover was damaged and it was cut the same, so I was like, whatever. And then pages started falling out of this while I was reading it, and so I went to see on Amazon if I could return it, but it was literally 1 day past the month since I got it, and I can't return it anymore. So these pages I had to like stuff back in. I want to say like 4 different pages started falling out as I was reading it. So Amazon needs to up their game of producing books because that was very disappointing. I hope book 3 is not that way too. This is book 2 in the series and they are mafia romances, and this one is between a girl who is in her mid-20s and her husband just died and he was actually gay, so they didn't have a romantic relationship and she was more like a friend to him and she was covering for him. She is now engaged to someone who is in his 30s and his wife died, but he was actually in love with his wife, and so he is very closed off and harsh, and so she is very intrigued by him. She's attracted to him and she is okay with them getting married, but then he shows no sign of wanting to actually like be intimate as a married couple, and she's like, what's wrong with me? And so it's their romance. There are a lot of dark themes in here. There's a lot of action and fighting and death and stuff, so it's really good. I give it 4 to 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. Not necessarily 5 out of 5 stars for me, but it's still a really fun romance series. Then I picked up Desperate Measures by Katie Robert. This was, I believe, free for a while on ebook. That's why I had a copy. And this one is a Jasmine and Jafar erotic retelling. So it's very steamy, and it's about Jasmine, who is pretty much captive by her father, and Jafar saves her, but like he acts like he's not saving her, but she knows he is and he knows he is, and so it's a lot of like we act like we hate each other and like I don't want this but we really do, and so it's a very steamy romance. He's a lot older than her and I really love the growth Jasmine went through in this book and the ending, so I'm very excited to read book 2, which I believe is Hades and Meg, and then book 3 is Tink and Hook, so I'm excited to read the rest of the series. I give this 4 out of 5 stars. The next was a really disappointing read, and that was from Alaska with Love by Allie James. This was this author's first book and it really read like a first book. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. I was bored to tears and I hated the main character, and like the dialogue was very cringy, especially with the guy, and she ends up writing letters to someone in the military because she heard it on the radio, and he writes back, but he's very like short and to the point in his, and she's like, oh well, I'll just keep on writing, and she like writes these bizarre things that she thinks is funny. She's like, I can't believe I wrote that, like, oh well, men in uniform are so sexy, and she's like, oh my god, I can't believe I just said that to him, and I'm just like, why would you? You're being weird, and like all these weird things, and he thinks it's funny, and like they end up falling in love through letters, and we get her letter, and then like 4 pages later we get her letter again from his perspective. So we read it twice, and I thought that was weird. And then it was miscommunication when he shows up to meet her, which was stupid in my opinion. He's like, I knew I could never trust you, and I hate when that happens, when like a secret's revealed that's not true and the other person's like, of course I knew all along that you were a liar, and I was like, what was the point of building a relationship if you're gonna throw it away in 2 seconds? So 2 out of 5 stars. Really would not recommend, but I did get this ARC from Berkeley, and this comes out in March. On Tuesday. Next, I listened to the audiobook of Breathless by Lex Martin. I was sent an e-arc of this from the author, but then I noticed Audible Escape had the audiobook the day it released, so I decided to listen to it. This is a small town romance and a friends to lovers. Our main character has been in love with her best friend for forever, but he's a ladies' man, playboy. She's back in town for a wedding of his, I don't know if it's his sister or his brother. I don't remember which one. It's, I believe, the couple from book 1 in the series. They can be read as standalones, and he realizes that she's actually an attractive woman and he wants to date her, and so it's their relationship and romance, and he's hiding a secret, and it's leading up to this wedding. Small town, very cute. I don't really love friends to lovers though, where the girl has been pining after the playboy guy for so long, and he's just been, yeah, no, doing what he wants to do, and then he finally sees her in a new light. That's not my favorite trope, so I did give it a 4 out of 5 stars, but it was really cute, really sweet. If you like the small town romance, I would recommend reading this. Next is another disappointing read, and that was Wild at Heart by K.A. Tucker. I know some people love this. I, for one, am not someone who loves to see a couple happy and in love and doing their thing. This read a lot like a women's fiction book. We didn't have the angst we had in book 1, which was The Simple Wild. This one, we have Jonah and Kala happy and living in Alaska, and Kala struggling to live in Alaska, which she said she wasn't going to struggle with because her mom did the same thing. And she spends half the book shopping for furniture for their house, spending an ungodly amount of money, and then getting annoyed that Jonah's annoyed because he worries about money, and she's like, well, I can spend $5,000 on a kitchen table if I want to. I'm just like, oh my god. And she is just a very dependent person. She needs people there, and I get there's people like that, and so she gets mad when Jonah is off flying all the time because, hello, he's a pilot, that's what he does. And she gets mad, and he's like 30 minutes late, and she gets mad, and she doesn't like try to like have something of her own in Alaska. She just mopes around and buys furniture. I was very annoyed the whole time. I was very bored the whole time. We finally got some conflict for 50% of the way through, and it was done within 5%, and then we didn't have conflict till the end. So I gave this 2.5 out of 5 stars. I was just very disappointed because I don't like that kind of book. So I think it was definitely a me thing. There are plenty of people who loved it because they love that in their romances, but it wasn't for me. Next, I picked up A Hunger Like No Other by Cressley Cole. This was our pick for Ravished by Romance, the book club I have with Sarah and Lacey. I will link our live show down below. This is a classic vampire romance that came out around the same time of Dark Lover by J.R. Ward. And we have our main character, female, who is a vampire slash fae. And the guy is like some sort of werewolf, and he ends up mating with her. And the whole thing is like him taking her to his like castle and figure out like how to convince her that they're meant to be. And I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I found it boring. It was very confusing with the whole world. There are lots of different paranormal creatures, and it was so hard to grasp. And I didn't really feel their romance. Like, I get he loved her because she was his mate. She didn't feel that mate bond, and so she like all of a sudden loved him, and I was like, why do you love him? Is there a reason for that? I didn't feel it. And not any action happened until like the end. There was a lot. It was really boring. 150 pages was of them driving to his castle. So I expected more, but I will continue off the series. I'm glad I read this, and hopefully I enjoy the rest more. Then I decided to listen to the audiobook of Enemies by Tijan. I know Melissa from She's an Open Book really enjoyed this, and I am hit or miss with Tijan, so I decided to give it a listen, and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. It is, our girl is in college, and she has this past with this pro football player that literally every character is obsessed with. The whole plot was driven by the fact that people were obsessed with this guy, Stone, and everything she did went back to him because they had a past, because her dad used to work for his dad. His dad fired her dad, and then I think her mom died of cancer, and they couldn't keep up the bills because her dad didn't have a job, and like she decided to move to the town where he's a pro football player to go to college, and it's like hundreds of miles away from her home. And so like the whole story goes from there, but like something in her past was affected by someone who was obsessed with him because of her, and then every single person in the book is obsessed with him. And I'm just like, I get celebrities, but like maybe I'm just like, I like sports, but like if I saw like Drew Brees on the street, I wouldn't run up to him and like harass him. But every single character in this book would go up to him and harass him. Every single one. And she roomed with a bunch of roommates that were connected to the college football team, and they hated her when she moved in, and then once they realized she was friends with him, they like clicked and loved her and like were super nice and friendly to her. And I'm like, that's so shallow. They only like her because of her connection to this pro football player. And I didn't get the romance at all, and then they like broke up, and I didn't get that, and then they got back together, and I didn't get that. I 3 out of 5 stars. I just didn't get it. I don't think I'll be reading a lot of Tijan. I'm still interested in her Fallen Crest University series, but we'll see if I read it. And the last one I finally read, Dying for Rain by B.B. Easton. This is book 3 in the trilogy. I loved the first one, gave the second one 4 stars, and gave this one 4 stars. This one was so much more action-packed than book 2, but the ending I felt like it was really lacking for like the conclusion to everything. It felt too tied up in a neat little bow, and like everything was resolved within like a day. And I was like, pretty sure society cannot come back from a complete collapse of the whole system in a day. But I loved how there was a lot of action. You didn't know how they were going to get out of it. You didn't know who's going to survive and how they were going to survive. We do lose a beloved character in here. And so I really did enjoy that. And it was crazy the things that happened. This was totally action-packed the whole time. Much unlike book 2, which is why I gave book 2 4 stars, because it was mostly her sitting around. This one, go, go, go the whole time, which I loved. So I gave it 4 out of 5 stars though because of that very end of the book, but I still really love this trilogy. If you want a really good apocalyptic romance, you should read this. And that is my February wrap up. Let me know down below what you read this month and what you were happy that I read, or your thoughts on the things I read. I would love to hear. As always, thank you so much for watching, and have a good day.